everybody. Oh, that's not a good start. Lost my voice before we even began. Hi, how are you doing? Lovely to see you. Thank you for coming along this lunchtime or later if you are watching on catch up. So today we've got a bit of an Ask the Expert session, if I can call myself an expert, don't know that I can. But we're going to talk about growing a VA team. So I've got a little bit about my background and where my team is now. So this is not my team, this is my internal team, as it were, Mabel and Meg. I've been running Personally Virtual since 2014. It was just me for quite a few years. And then it grew gently, then quite fast, and we're now a team of about 32. It sort of meanders between 30 and 35 and has done for the last 5 years or so. And some of those people work full time for me, and some do. I think probably the lowest is about 10 hours a month. Our client base is a mixture. We have some one-to-one clients, one VA, one client, and then we have some team gigs where we have multiple VAs all supporting one bigger client. I think our smallest, we call them whale clients just because of the size. Our smallest whale, or dolphin, if you will, is 5 VAs, and our biggest one is currently 11 or 12. I lose track. It's probably 12 if you count me, and I don't do a lot. So yeah, that's kind of where we are now. And then as well as running Personally Virtual, I've also got a podcast, Productivity Nerd, a couple of books, Virtually Painless, which some of you may have come across, about starting up as a VA, and then a couple of years ago I wrote a book for clients and prospective clients, essentially sort of what is this VA thing all about? Do I need one? Would I be better with a full-time PA? Answering all those kind of questions. And I've got a couple of lovely awards as well. So the plan for today really is I'm here and ready and able to answer your questions. You can be brave and ask me as a person. I don't know what the tech is, but there is a way. Or you're more than welcome to put it in chat. And what I've collated is kind of a list of questions that people ask me most often. So I've got those, and I will work through them until somebody shouts that they've got a different question or a follow-up question on those topics. So that's kind of how today is going to work. But it's really informal. If we go off on a tangent, that's fine, right? There's no such thing as a stupid question. So first up, if you're thinking about outsourcing, our strapline at Personally Virtual is outsource everything but your brilliance. And my first bit of outsourcing was actually a cleaner, because I worked the maths out and went, well, I could have a cleaner on it. I could have a cleaner for 2 hours a week, and that 2 hours I save on a Saturday morning doing the cleaning, I can make more than a cleaner's going to cost me. So my first bit of outsourcing was a cleaner, and then a gardener. I don't have kids, but I do have a dog walker, which is useful for when I'm in London, or I just have a dog walker every Friday, so I don't have to think about leaving my desk. I can just crack on. But there are loads of people, whether in your home life or in your work life, that could be your first point of call to get you some more billable hours back if you're not quite brave enough to dip your toe in the water with getting associates to do client work yet. Obviously, first obvious one is a bookkeeper. Now, I quite like Xero. I really like reconciling Xero. Strangely ticks a lot of my boxes about ticking boxes, because it's nice and neat. I had to force myself to stop reconciling Xero, and even now every so often lovely Laura will message me and go, please stop reconciling stuff in Xero, you're not doing it right. I will stop. So getting some bookkeeping help, really great first thing to outsource. Some marketing help. Again, if you don't love writing blogs, or you just need more content than you can create yourself, or you're finding that any of these things are falling to the bottom of your list because you're too busy with other stuff, it's worth getting somebody in. Doesn't have to be a huge amount of hours necessarily either to start with. You can start them gently. So there's some things to think about before you launch into the whole world of I need a team of VAs doing client stuff. But let's assume that you are ready for a team of associates, as well as some outsourced things, whether home life or professional. And let's move on with the FAQs. So, first most obvious question is, What's the tipping point? How do you know that you're genuinely ready to bring somebody else in, rather than just having a busy month or two? So this is the million-dollar question, really. And there's also several different ways of doing outsourcing to associates. So the first way is that you pass a task to your associate. Say it's something like, I don't know, copy typing, whatever. So you pass your task to the associate does it, gives it back, you check it hits the brief, you send it on to the client. A bit like an accountancy, right? Your accountant sits like a sort of big queen frog in the middle of her office, but the actual day-to-day work is being farmed back to bookkeepers, to people who specialise in that, and then it all comes back to your accountant, who produces the accounts and sends it on to you once they've checked it. So that's one way of doing it. That works if you're doing those types of tasks where the associate doesn't need to interact with the client directly. It's good if you want to test somebody out to see what their skill set is like, to make sure that you're happy with their quality of their work. However, as a long-term building plan, it's an absolute waste of time, because if you have to check every piece of work that comes across your desk, that becomes your job, right? That's not a job. You're becoming a teacher. You're just marking pieces of work, effectively. So long-term, that is not ideal. Realistically, to build a bigger business, you need to trust people to talk to clients on their own, like big brave people that we are. So that would be somebody working directly with a client through your agency, through your brand. So you found them, you put them in there, the client talks to them on a daily basis and talks to you as an account manager, but they will have the weekly catch-ups with the client. And depending on what the work is, this is much more efficient, because if it's something like diary management, you're not going to be able to go, oh, can I book this Tuesday? Have that come to me check it, go, yes, Tuesday's fine, send it back. Total waste of time. So for some roles, you really have to let people interact with the clients directly. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to build the processes and make sure you trust them for that to happen. So there's two different ways of outsourcing. As I say, I think one is probably much better than the other, depending on the type of work, right? There are occasions where the first one is more appropriate. And tipping point wise, I would say if you would consistently have more work than you can do, or you're consistently saying no to people, then it's time to think about getting an associate. And again, two slightly different ways to do this. You can have an associate sort of as an ad hoc person to throw bits of work at, like, oh my God, somebody's just asked me to book a private dinner in London for 14 people next Wednesday and I am rammed. I could really use some help doing that. And you have somebody who's in the background who you go, can you do this? So they don't necessarily have to talk to the client. They're doing one piece of work, they're coming back and they're giving it to you. But there's no commitment for them to do any more than that. Or you sort of give them a client, like you name a client. You go, right, this client is being looked after by Sarah. Sarah is the VA for Bob, and Bob and Sarah are sort of matched together and they work together for however long the project is, or forever, depending on how it goes. So again, different ways of doing it. And that's how we work. So all of our clients have named VAs. They all interact with the clients. They see the clients much more than I do. I will have regular catch-ups with the client and with the associates to make sure that everything is going okay. And on some of the bigger jobs, we have a team lead who's even more daily in there, making sure everything works. But really, you need to have enough work that you can feed yourself, because you're not going to be making a fortune out of one associate or two associates. You're not going to be making a massive cut on every hourly wage that goes out. So, if you get people outsourcing 3 hours a month or 2 hours a month, it's like, what are you going to make of that 20? You have to have enough to make it worth the effort, really. So consistently, I would say, if you find yourself having to say no to people, that's the time. There is also a tipping point, I would say, in that you need to think about your own billable hours. So most people, unless you have started and you immediately know you're going to build an agency, or some people, it happens that they have to take time off, like maybe they have a baby or something. So they literally have to overnight become an agency because they're not doing any client work themselves. Most people will be fully booked with client work, probably overbooked, and then go, oh crap, I need an associate. And at that point, not only are you having to deliver your own client work to the same standard you were before, you're also having to manage somebody else on top of that. So if you know that you're going to grow, at some point you're going to have to reduce down your own client hours. You can't bill 25, 30 hours a week yourself and expect to manage a team without dropping multiple balls. It's just not going to work. So every agency owner will be slightly different, and will do it in a different way and have a different preference on how much client work they do. I reduced mine gradually. I was pretty much maxed when I started to build. That's kind of why I built. And then gradually I've finagled it down. So I only have one very small client myself now, and everybody else is looked after elsewhere. But you need to have enough to make it worthwhile for you to lose some client work. Because actually, if you're going for real growth, you shouldn't be doing the day-to-day billable stuff yourself. Other people should be doing it. But there's obviously an income tipping point there, right? If you need all of your billable hours yourself to pay your bills, then you can't reduce any to bring somebody else in. So there is going to be a fairly messy period where you've got a bit of both going on. It's going to be horrible. But it does pass. But know that you are going to have to reduce down your hourly, your billable hours yourself in order to run a successful agency. So I have not seen any questions on that. I'm just going to open up the chat in case I've missed one. Nope, we're all good. So my next most favourite question is, how do you go from being an I to being a we? You know, people get in touch with me because they want me as their VA. How do I say, well, actually, it's not going to be me, it's going to be somebody else because I can't do it? And weirdly, this was the bit I found much hardest. And it was a lingering period for me because we almost all get our recommendations from people we know, right? So again, it's that expectation of, oh, it's going to be Kathy. And it's like, well, actually, it's not because I'm drowning. So the easiest ones to immediately pass to somebody else are people where there isn't that personal connection. You know, it's not somebody you used to work with. It's not someone referred to you by somebody else. It's, oh yeah, so-and-so is amazing. Well, then that's, you know, I'd debate that one. Easiest to start with someone who doesn't know you from a bar of soap. They have no skin in the game with your name or anybody else. Now, I would argue anyway that if somebody gets in touch with you who, you know, is your best mate, whatever, and says, I really want it to be you, your options, if you're full, are either to ditch another client somewhere, which you're probably not going to do, why would you? Take them on and, you know, drown because you're already wildly overloaded, or say no, and then they will have to go and find somebody else, somewhere else, you know, from the wide world of the internet, who could potentially be bloody awful. Or they take your recommendation on someone else who you have vetted and you believe will do a good job for them. So that, you know, their options are they go find somebody else in the world who's not you, or they know you, they trust you, they take your recommendation that says, I have a team member, this person is great, please, you know, I'm very happy for you to work with them, I think you'd be great. Do you want to meet them quickly and see if you get on? So actually, it feels very angsty to us, but it's, when you think about it from the client's perspective, they have a lot of options. I've got a couple of questions in the chat now, so I'll come back to those. But yeah, they're really your options. So when you're saying it's either we, and that's not me, it's somebody else, or it's please go away, it's a pretty easy question for a client to pick up. So question, well, any golden advice for getting through the messy, horrible stage of managing client work whilst passing off to associates? Well, yes. Firstly, get a cleaner, right? Get as much help as you can anywhere else to buy yourself as much time as possible. And you have to dedicate time to work on your business. As you'll have seen from the podcast, I'm a bit of a productivity nerd. I love nothing more than organising stuff and keeping people organised, whether that's myself, my team or other people. Religiously put in time to run your business. So I used to do 11 till 1 every single day. That was my line in the sand, and I would not touch client work. That gave me kind of from getting to my desk to 11 o'clock to clear up any screaming things, and the rest of the day after lunch to be on client stuff. But 11 till 1 was purely working on my business, whether that was managing associates, social media, sorting out finances, whatever it may be. But you have to allocate time and put it in your diary as if it's a meeting, and it's non-negotiable, absolutely non-negotiable. Because if you're managing people in the margins, you're not doing a good job. And either something will go wrong because you're not all over it, or you will feel like something might go wrong, which is going to lead to a pretty anxious feeling. And you'll be at the back of your mind going, oh my God, is everything okay over there? I haven't checked in. Oh God, what's going on over there? So allocate time in your diary. 2 hours is a lot. Might be an hour if you've only got a couple of people on the team. But make sure that you have a list, however you use it, CRM, whatever system you use, have a process for checking in with associates and clients. Make sure that in the early days you do it more often than you think you should. There is a sort of known thing when people buy something. It's like, we'll talk about handbags because I am a hand obsessive. So you buy a handbag, you've got all that anticipation of your new handbag arriving through the post. Then it arrives and it's great. And it's got a lovely wrapper and it comes in tissue paper and it's beautiful. And you're like, oh my God, this is the best handbag in the world. I love it. And then you get to day 2 and you go, oh, I can't actually fit my purse in it. I have to get another purse, that's annoying. And getting a new VA for a client is a little bit like that. They will be super excited about what is to come. They will be delighted on the day of, and then day 2, they're suddenly going to go, oh my God, I've got to explain how to do everything to somebody else. It's going to take me twice as long as doing it myself. So there is a pain point when people first start. There's nothing to do with your VA and everything to do with the client, whose expectations are, I mean, they're not wrong. They will get time back, but initially it's going to take more time. It's going to feel painful because they're going to have to explain things they haven't had to explain before because it's all in their head. And those first few weeks are going to be a bit titchy for them. And it's worth addressing that up front and going, I know the first few weeks you're going to feel like it's harder, but that's okay because come week 3, week 4, you're going to get some time back. So those first few weeks, make sure you're really managing everybody. And that's just the client. So we have a thing called new associate coddling, which I do not do because I am an arsey cow and I have very little tolerance for stupid questions, which does not make for a lovely manager, can I tell you. So one of my team, who is lovely and fluffy and very good with stupid questions, does new associate coddling. And she will check the timesheets. She'll make sure the associate knows how they're filling in the timesheets. Check that they're doing it right, check that they understand what the ask is on timesheets. You know, you record live, you need to have a project, blah, 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 all that good stuff. Because they'll all say, yes, we understand when you're doing the induction, but then real life does not reflect that. Same with invoicing. You know, I've had people saying, you know, supposedly extensively experienced VAs who will go, what do I do about invoicing? Do I just send you my bank details? And I was like, oh no, you send me an invoice, obviously. But people don't know sometimes. So it's worth having somebody, whether that's you, probably is you in the early stages, who just make sure that all those really simple things are easy for the new associate. And when you are working with your new associate, there is a thing that I call the new associate horrors, new client horrors. It happens to new associates, but it's about clients. But I've had it as well. I used to get it a lot. Being a VA is a bit like being a temp, right? You have new clients that come on board. And a bit like the client, you're dead excited, you've won a new bit of work, you can't wait, it's going to be amazing, they're lovely. And then you start work and there's a whole barrage of new information and new tech and new passwords, and you know you wrote down as much as you humanly could, and you recorded the Zoom meeting when they sort of downloaded their brain, but all of a sudden, like, it's just left the building. You know, you can't remember a thing, and you know, oh, if I ask again, I'm going to look like a right idiot. So looking after your new associates is really important. And also, I find this wobble tends to happen if there's something going on with them outside of work. So I've had associates who have, after 2 weeks, gone, I have to quit, I can't do it, I'm stupid, I can't make it work, I hate it, I can't do it. And in every case, it's been, they're going through a divorce, they're moving house, they're having an extension bill, their kid's being a complete prick, and they've been in the school 3 days a week. There is always something going on behind that associate's work, and it is as well to know, you don't need to know the ins and outs of what's going on in someone's life, that's not your role, but be aware that taking on a new client can be quite an emotional and challenging thing. You've all done it, you've all taken on new clients, it's nerve-wracking, right? So hence why I don't do it, because I am not of a sympathetic nature most days. So somebody who is there to give a bit of support and make it, you know, and be there if there's a wobble and go, oh, I'm sure you're not stupid, you just, you know, is there a way we can find this information out? Someone who's there to hold their hand. So early days, management, and that takes time, right? And it takes a process. So make sure you've got the time in your diary to do it. It gets less as you go along. You know, now some associates and clients I only speak to quarterly. It's all just ticking along. It's great. But early days, you've got to do a lot. And our next question, which is definitely one on my list, how do you vet potential associates? So, and I've got another question which I genuinely can't understand. I'm going to have to reread it really slowly. So vetting potential associates. So ideally, they would come from somebody you know, they're referred. That doesn't always happen, you know, and sometimes people who've been referred, it may be they've worked with somebody before in an employed role, but that doesn't translate terribly well to the VA world. So, you know, it's still mishmash. You have to do the best that you can to get your due diligence done. So if you're putting an ad out, make it really clear. Make sure that they've got all of the requirements they need, you know, ICO registration, all that good stuff. They're your very, very basics. On your application form, you don't want to, it's not a job. So you're not going to be, you know, asking for a CV. You're probably going to be, depending on what the role is, I tend to be LinkedIn because most of my guys are diary managers. So their previous employed experience is what I need to look at to know what calibre of diary manager they're going to be. But if it's social media or if it's something else, then you may need, I don't know, portfolios or testimonials or whatever. But you need social proof that they can do what they say they're going to do, whatever that looks like. And I always get on an application form, I get people to write, and I literally spell it out, and I will say to them, this is your bit to make me want to talk to you, go. Right, so it's really clear. It's like, this is your, sell yourself to me. You know, why are you great for this job? And I will usually have got a job description at that point as well, so they know what they're trying to hit. And I literally will check, you know, can they spell? How is their grammar? If they're going to be client facing, if they're going to be in the background uploading Canva images, it doesn't matter, right? But I want to know that they're taking the time to fill in the form with consideration and care, which is how I want them to look after my client. And I want to know that they are diligent in answering what's been asked. So that's kind of the first pass. And then you meet everybody, you know, to an extent, it's gut instinct, but they do have to have the chops to back it up as well. We now have a test that all associates have to do, which again is not so much about testing their abilities, although there is an attention to detail thing in there, but it's much more about how they work, seeing how they work compared to others on the team. So I've benchmarked it across a few other people. And in the end, you have to trust people. You have to trust that people are going to do the job they say they're going to do, and check in and make sure that they are, right? But it's never a guaranteed thing. So let me see if I can try and unravel this. Curious to hear your take on how you vet back-end support. Oh, okay, so we've just looked at that. Especially when they're offshore. I've worked as behind-the-scenes EA for execs in the US and Europe. How much trust in well, yeah, so same sort of question, just with a bit of... and it doesn't really matter where they're based, to be honest. You still see them on Zoom. Some of my clients are overseas. Some of my team are overseas. I've met some of them in person. But we generally don't take on associates who are offshore. You know, they are generally... they've had some work experience in the UK or the US, I would say, simply because of the type of people we work with. You know, we work with C-suite execs, so they need to have had that experience in an environment that I understand well enough to know that they're working at that level. So we probably would consider other areas. You know, maybe people, I know I've had people apply before now who've been based in Dubai, and they've got amazing exec experience. We also have somewhat of a challenge with data management. So some clients will specify people have to be UK based. Sometimes it's EU, UK, US based. It depends on the client, but certainly as times go on, it's getting harder and harder to have people based out of the UK. And it's now at the point where some clients are literally, or even if they don't do it now, I will be thinking for the future and how complicated the government is making working as a freelancer, and I would already be looking for UK-based VAs. It's just the way of the world. We have one client who insists we use their laptop, and we've been shipping laptops all over the flipping place, and because of Brexit, can't get the bloody things back. So it's just not practical, and it makes more work. So there will come a point, I suspect, where we have to say it's UK only for UK clients. And what is the average turnover of associates? What I'm worried about is letting my clients down if my associates are flitty and it costs me more time. Yeah, there can be. Absolutely not a lot you can do about it, because people are going to people. What I would say, I've had my longest standing associate since 2014, and the one after that also since 2014 actually. One started in August and one started in October, I think. You have to make it attractive for associates to stay. Now, you have control over some of that, you don't have control over all of that. So pay them a decent rate, you have control over that. Look after them, you have control over that, which might look like, sending them a birthday card, or, sending them flowers if their dog dies, or whatever. Perhaps putting on some lunch and learn, a bit of social stuff. You don't have much control over the client. Yes, it's lovely if clients are good fun and really nice, but you can't guarantee that. Everybody has, we support a lot of execs. The one business we did support at one point, I think we had 24 people we supported. Are they all lovely? Yeah, pretty much. But some are more lovely than others, and some gel better with others. And also, you have people who are just by their nature quite flitty. You can check and see how long their longest client relationship is when you speak to them. If they consistently only spend 6 months with a client, or 6 months with an employer, or a year with an employer, I'd be a bit iffy about them sticking around. Whereas if somebody's got a bit of longevity, yeah. It's also worth knowing what their aims are, right, when they join you. So I was an associate for many, many years, and I stayed an associate even after I had a team, weirdly, because I really loved the team I was working with. Even though it wasn't paying me anywhere near the money I could have earned if I went direct, I stayed longer than I should have, because emotionally I enjoyed it and I appreciated the support, and that meant more to me than the money. Eventually, head overtook heart, and I had to move on because I just didn't have the time. But if you make it as attractive as possible, if it's no fun, no one's going to stay. And if the work is interesting, people will stay. And again, you don't necessarily have control over that. But you do have some control over your clients and letting your clients push boundaries and, stepping up for your associate if somebody is taking the mick. Because they can leave, right, and then you just have to bring somebody else in, and you have to quietly explain, oh, client's a bit of pain actually, so you might find it a bit hard work. So yeah, I think it varies wildly. Also depends on the kind of project, right? We do diaries, which is sort of an ongoing thing. Some lead VAs will have projects. So we had one project that was 6 weeks, and actually it wrapped up in 4. So I had an associate for 4 weeks, and that was all. I think I have had associates that have just come in for a sort of one-off thing. Today, literally, a fellow lead VA is looking for a pile of people to get a load of work done by tomorrow at midnight. And, she's like, anyone who can give me 8 to 24 hours between now and then, it'd be great. And I'm like, 24 hours? Okay. It just varies. But I think if you look after people right, they will stick around, because there's no real incentive for them to go anywhere else. But, people are always going to find roles that pay more, have people go back into a job, weirdly. So, it does happen, and it is a bit of a pain. And sometimes it seems to always happen with the one client, and it's nothing to do with that particular client, it's just how it falls. I'm really sorry. That person's got to go to Russia, that person's not very well. We've had one poor client, so in our big team of client, we've had one guy who's been supported now by 6 VAs. Through no fault of his own whatsoever. It's just been sheer bad luck. People have got ill, people have had to leave the country, and from their point of view that's too difficult data-wise, so we've had to swap him around. And then I've had others who've literally been with the same person for now nearly 10 years. 10 years? Can't do the maths. Yeah, about 10 years. So, yeah, it really varies. Right, I've got no more questions in the chat, so hopefully that answered those. If you want any follow-ups, please shout. But thinking back to associates, client trust. How do you position the shift to team delivery so the clients are comfortable working with someone other than you? Well, again, that is about selling your associates. So I will cheerfully tell clients that my associates are better diary managers than I do. Yeah, my diary management skill, I'm pretty good. They're amazing, right? I might be an 8 or a 9 out of 10, but they're probably an 11. They are shit hot good. And I will have that conversation with the client. You know, if I have to do holiday cover, I'll be like, Christ, the B team's in. Good luck. So if you're bringing people in, make sure that they're absolutely the best, because you have to be able to sell them. So you don't want to be iffy about them. You need to go, oh my God, this person's amazing. She's done this and she's done that. You're going to love them. And for me, because we do diaries, again, not relevant to every kind of VA, because often it's much more process driven, but I try and match people based on personality. So, you know, if I've got a real detail focused client, in my head, I will already be picturing, well, that person won't work, that person won't work. They'd be great with them, them and them, because it's all about getting those personalities to work together. And then that helps really build trust quickly between the client and the associate. And they know they've got you to come back to if there's a problem. So another one, what do you do if an associate steals your client? Never happened. Not yet. Never happened. Has it even happened at the prospect stage? No, I don't think it has. I've given clients to associates, kind of. It was complicated. It wasn't their client. I literally gave one of my clients to a completely different associate for reasons, because I basically couldn't give them what they needed. What I do in the initial stages, and not everybody does this, but before a client, so in my sort of sales process with a client is I have a chat with them. If they say yes, I will send them prices, we'll agree how many hours, and then I'll send them a couple of bios, and those bios usually don't have surnames on. I mean, it wouldn't take a rocket scientist to get on LinkedIn and work out who they were, because it says, you know, Jenny used to work at IBM and then at Barclays and blah, blah, blah. You know, it wouldn't take 5 minutes to noodle them out, virtual assistant ex IBM, but do your best. And then they meet them. And before they meet them, if they're not an existing associate, I have them sign an NDA. So, and I'm very often in early conversation, I'm quite cagey about the name of the client. So I don't give them the name of the client. I will say a consultancy or a marketing agency or whatever. I'll keep it really vague until the point where the meeting's going to happen. And at that point, I will tell them who it is, because they're going to want to go on Google and have a little look and see who they're meeting, which I think is only fair. But I will send, I'll send 2 meeting invites. So I'll send one to the associate with the Zoom link. So it's the associate email and my email, and I'll send a matching one to the client with my email and the same Zoom link, so they don't have each other's email. Again, wouldn't be beyond the wit of man for either to work it out, but there's only so many mitigating things you can do, really. So I think it's about putting sensible processes in to protect yourself. Obviously, my contracts say you cannot steal a client, clearly, and my client contracts say you cannot steal an associate. Or more to the point, they say you can employ an associate, but you need to pay me all the money, because essentially it's a recruitment fee. I know one VA where she's pretty sure an associate had an intro call with a client and then kind of went behind that person's back and took the client, one in 10 years of doing this. So yeah, it's pretty rare, I think. And also leave VAs talk. So if we hear about anything like that, everyone's going to know. We won't let them anywhere near our clients. But generally speaking, I don't think it's that common. So if there's no follow-up questions, another good one is control freak alert. So yeah, obviously there are things to worry about when you're handing your clients to other people. It is terrifying when you first hand a client to another person, even if you know them. I remember we won a new client, and it was my sort of second biggest client that I'd ever won. And I sat and sweated for like 4 hours because this particular associate hadn't replied to an email. And I'm like, oh my God, it's day 1. What are you doing? Reply to this email. And yeah, you just have to breathe and know that you've done the best you can. And most of the time it will be fine. So you do have to let go of your inner control freak a bit, particularly with what we do. I don't describe the how, right? It's like, you guys, you manage diaries, that's what you do. You've been doing it for probably 15 years. I'm not going to dictate to you how you manage a diary. We might have sessions about best practice and share ideas and, have Outlook tips and that kind of stuff. But because it's a very nuanced thing and VAs do it differently and clients do it differently, there isn't a this is how you run a diary list. Whereas if you're doing a project for somebody, if you're a kind of VA that does automations or that kind of stuff, you may very well go, right, this is how it works for us, this is the process you follow, and this is how we do it. And that's absolutely fine. So there are different levels, and it does depend on what you do. There will be, there are certainly a lot of questions in my test about how you run a diary and what decisions you make and what questions you would be asking. So I already know by the time I've even thought about putting somebody in front of a client that they understand strategic diary management, because I've asked them to answer those things. Oh, so you get 2 a year? The VA's worked with the client for a while, so we do the traditional recruitment fee. Yeah, I think it depends what the... and I know other people it's happened to where the client will steal the associate, as in they use the VA agency as like a recruitment agency, sort of try before you buy kind of effort. And because I have heard of that happening, I've had my contracts changed because I thought they were a little bit generous to, clients that wanted to take the associate on. So now I've made them much more. It's not just about the fact that I'm losing an associate, it's the fact that, potentially it could be losing a whole job. So I make the clients pay a lot more in the new contracts than I did in the old contracts. But I do think it's kind of luck. And there's also something about getting the right associates, but you can't mitigate against everything. So I haven't had any yet, but time will tell. Oh no, did I have one? Sort of. I had one VA who was temporarily working for somebody while she recruited a full-time EA, and she recruited my full-time EA, which was, I didn't especially love either of them, so I wasn't unhappy that they just moved away from me, to be honest, and put me out of the loop. But yeah, we knew she was recruiting, so yeah, bit iffy, but not disastrous. How do you deal with associates who don't want to do your test, initial meeting, interview with you as they're not an employee? Yeah, their choice, their business, their choice. Don't have to do it. But I do pay them to do the test. I don't pay them to meet the client, but I do pay them for an hour to do the test because I think that's fair. They're giving up their time. They work, most of us do, for hourly rate, so I pay them to do the test. If they don't want to do it because they're too princessy, then they're not right for us anyway. So yeah, I just let them wander off. So yeah, and we had one client where they were recruiting for a very specific role, and this poor VA, I did warn her, but I think she had with the client. So she did my test, she did an interview with me, she did an interview with one of my team who was doing the resourcing for this particular role because it was quite complicated. And then I think she had something like 4 client interviews before they finally started. It was painful. And that's just sometimes what happens. And it was for the right reasons, and they're an existing client and they weren't being awkward. It's just this woman has to work with a particular team, so they wanted to make sure everybody was going to gel. If it was a new client, that would be ringing all sorts of bells for me, and I'm like, oh, red flag. But it does sometimes happen. But no, if an associate doesn't kind of go with the recruitment flow, as it were, then that's fine. That's their choice. There are lots of other people out there who will be happy to do that. And I think as well, I tend not to usually describe it as a test, or when I do talk about it, I say it's more about finding out how you work. It is a test, but so is filling in an application form, because I'm looking to see if you can spell and whether you respond to something with 2 lines or with 17 pages, because both of those things tell me things that I need to know, right? If it's 17 pages, I'm not going to read it. But I'm also going to know that you're a detail fiend. And actually, if I'm looking for someone who is a detail fiend for a client who is that way inclined, that's useful data. Whereas someone who writes 2 lines, perhaps they're not that invested, but also I would probably be that person as well, because I'm all about keep it short and keep it sharp. So I know I have to, sometimes expand on what my natural instinct would be in order to give enough information in those kind of situations. I will not work with detailed people. It's not great for me. Thinking about finances. So obviously, if you want to keep people, you've got to pay them enough money. But you can only do that if your rate to clients are correct. So you might need to do some maths, and if you're going for an agency model, you might need to put your prices up. Generally speaking, solo VAs will be cheaper than agencies. You know, I lost a job the other week. I wasn't sad, I won't go into the details, but they went with a cheaper option, and that cheaper option was a solo VA, because agencies have overheads, right? They're more expensive. My timesheets alone cost me 250 quid a month. You know, it's an overhead, and that's just timesheets. You add into that password manager, which is probably much the same. I don't even get my associates 365 licenses because I don't see the point of giving them an extra thing to check. You know, everyone's got too many inboxes as it is. Why would I give them another one that's only going to have me messaging them? I just use Slack, right? Some do if they have clients where they need an extra one. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to hit that button. But you have now got my QR codes if you want to find me on LinkedIn, find the podcast, or find the books. There you go. See, I was trying to get rid of a pop-up and I just flipped the thing. So yeah, you will need to think about your pricing. Definitely make sure your rates to clients are right, and factor in the fact that not only do you yourself as a human need money to live, but the bigger you get, the more expensive the overheads are. And mindset shift as well. When you're thinking about having those conversations with clients, it's kind of weird going from being a solo VA to having a team, and you need to train your brain. So I used to do this with pricing when I first started. I used to say over and over again, the rate is, the hourly rate is, the rate is, rather than my rate, because my rate felt it was putting a judgment on my skills and abilities, and I always felt like I was asking for too much money, so it made me all twitchy. So I just went the rate. So I still have the rate. Sometimes it's our rate. And again, when you're talking, make sure your website, make sure your LinkedIn, everything says we. You know, we can do this. The team can do this. And when work comes to you, your first thought isn't, do I want to do this? Your first thought has to be, who is best placed to do this? Is it somebody on the team already? Is it an associate I know from networking from somewhere? Or do I need to go out and recruit? And if I need to go out and recruit, what's the timing on that? And it may be, so I have what I call my virtual bench. So if people get in touch and want work and I don't have anything that's right for them at that given moment, I have a bench of people that are I've met, I've had a chat with, and if a piece of work comes in that I think is a good fit for them, I'll get in touch and go, do you still have capacity? I had one lady who was on my bench for like 5 years, and she would ping me a message and say, I'm just finishing a project, have you got anything? And I'd be like, no. And then I'd message her and go, I've got a really great role for you. And she'd be like, I'm next. 5 years it took us to work together, but we got there in the end. So having that network of people and being open, if you know you're going to grow and you know that the next piece of work that comes in the door for you, you're not going to do, an associate's doing. There's nothing wrong with lining somebody else up, as long as you're open about it, right? And saying, I haven't got anything at the moment, but I know the next piece of work that comes in, I'm going to want to hang out. If you're happy to have a conversation on that basis, let's chat. I mean, I don't think you can over-promise what's not there. But most associates, as long as they know you haven't got a specific client for them, are happy to have a get-to-know-you chat, and then down the line you get back in touch and go, right, I'm going to finish this process off. So I don't put those people through the test. I don't do that until I've got an actual role in mind and I'm shortlisting, because it costs me money and I may never use them, right? So when we get to the point where I've got an actual named person, I'll look through my bench, I'll look through my existing team and work out who I think is a good fit and make some calls. And at that point, those bench people will get the shout, and they might not have space anymore, they might have moved on, they might not be doing associate work anymore. And then I'll just update my systems. So yeah. Associates, they use client emails. So all our clients insist that the associates use their emails, they don't use their own. I wouldn't have them using their own. That is the only time when I would give them a personally virtual one, because I don't want them using their own emails. But all our clients are corporate, we have to use their emails. Again, nature of what we do, right? It's very different if you're building funnels. It's a different setup. But for us, because we are working as PAs in a client, there's going to be emails all day long. So yes, we have a client email. And I think there's one job where we don't, and she uses a PV one for that. Do your associates have their own clients as well, or do you find work is only for you? Varies. So in theory, yes, everybody should have more than one client, IR35 and all that. So I do have a couple of people based overseas, and they are fully booked with my stuff. And I have one employee who's obviously fully booked with my stuff. Everybody else has multiple clients, as all VAs should, right? You should spread bet. So yeah, everybody else has other clients outside of me, and that is how I like it, because otherwise it runs the risk of me being seen as their employer. So yeah, ideally, they should have at least one client other than you, so you're not risking the wrath of HMRC or whoever it is that worries about these things. But yeah, you really need your associates to have multiple clients. And for me, I have a kind of limit on how many hours I will give one associate. It's different if they're not based in the UK because it's a different tax system. But those based in the UK, there's kind of only so many, and I start going, that's too many hours, got to spread that out. Also, from a practical point of view, if they went off sick, I'd have an awful lot of hours to cover. And mostly those hours are spread across multiple clients, so there'd be different people and different clients to cover them. But all of a sudden, if you have to cover somebody's full-time hours, that's a lot. And other people, and I don't really know who they work for, which I quite like. It's quite weird, have a conversation with them. Oh yeah, my client is a gardener. And I've got a gardener, gardener is client. Everybody has different clients. And some people work with multiple agencies. So, I know several of my team work with other lead VAs, and everybody's uber discreet about it. And yeah, it just kind of works. But yeah, they should really have multiple clients. Right, so we've got 10 minutes left. Are there any burning questions? So I've got a load more FAQs, which people have asked me over the years. Mindset shift. What's the hardest personal adjustment you had to make when moving from solo VA to agency owner? I think it's stepping back from doing the doing is the hardest thing, because I was so used to and so much expected my business to always be me doing the day-to-day. And with it, I love managing diaries. Like I said, I'm only an 8 out of 10, but I do like it. And I don't get to do it anymore. Not that long ago, I even handed over managing my own diary because I was making such a mess of it. And so now one of my team manages my diary, and life is so much better. So yeah, I think stepping back from doing the doing and always putting your hand up to, do holiday cover or somebody's stuck or whatever, that kind of thing is quite tricky, I think. You have to sit on your hands almost and see if something. So we have in all our team gigs, we use Slack, and the team will cover each other. They can also, again, IR35, the team are allowed to send substitutes when they're on holiday or if they don't want to work, which is in our contracts and in all our processes, because, again, from a tax point of view, they are a supplier. They are not an employee. And as a supplier, Bill the plumber wants to send his second-in-command, Todd, you don't have much to say over that. Or you can say no as the client, but Bill's got every right to send Todd if he wants to, as have my associates. So we have, within team, we have a holiday process, and generally they tend to cover each other within team. But for one-to-one gigs, people will send substitutes if they want to. There's only a couple that do. But with my permission and the client's permission, they absolutely can. Again, all these processes are things you have to think about, and I suppose the least fun bit for me is the grown-up stuff, as I think of it. So, we've just renewed our Cyber Essentials. It was torturous. I hated every minute of it. I swore like a trooper for like 3 weeks getting through it. It's just not the kind of thing I find fun. But that kind of regulatory thing, you can't pass that on to somebody else, right? You can get advice, you can get lawyers, you can get accountants, you can get cyber experts, you can get advice from people, but really the buck stops with you. So I suppose I don't love that side of things because it always feels outside of my comfort zone. But I will do it, admittedly with swearing. And what else? And when things go wrong, again, buck stops with me. If a client rings up and goes, yeah, she's really messed this up, associate, I have to sort that out. And it usually looks like having an unpleasant conversation with the associate, unpleasant conversation with the client, probably several, and then switching that associate out for another resource. And sometimes we switch resources because people just don't gel. It's just not the right chemistry fit. With what we do, that's really important. It's less important on other kind of work, right? So we do sometimes make resource switches from a sort of just a chemistry point of view rather than, not delivering. Some people deliver perfectly well, but a different type of personality would be better. And we make those switches. Not often, but sometimes. But it's never fun telling somebody that, sorry, this isn't working out for this client. For whatever reason, it's worse if they've... Well, no, I'm not sure if it is. Is it worse to say they're just not gelling with you, or worse to get some actual feedback that says, well, you're not responsive enough, or you messed up too many meetings in a row, or whatever it may be. But then, they're not fun conversation to have. Right, we've got 5 minutes. What is a must for cyber safety? Well, we're Cyber Essentials accredited, and I think that takes you through pretty much the basics. It's £300, I think, to self-assess. But the interesting thing with Cyber Essentials is freelancers and suppliers don't count. So my Cyber Essentials only covers me and my employee, doesn't cover the associates as such, as in they're not in scope. Having said that, because we are really cautious about data with clients, and we work for some very highfalutin clients who need these things. We have in place some basics. So when an associate first starts with us, they have to tell us what machine they're using, tell us what operating system, whether they have paid antivirus or not. And the answer is yes, they have it, otherwise they don't work with us. Saying people with Macs get caught out. I got caught out for my Cyber Essentials. I didn't realise how long I'd had my Mac, and the latest update isn't supported by my Mac. I had to go, right? Really nice Mac, still working perfectly. Can't use it anymore. Absolutely gutting. But those kind of things, when you're running a business, as a business expense, you've just got to suck it up. So what machine are they on? If they're trying to run a business off a Google Chrome book or something, then they're probably not taking it very seriously, right? They should be investing in their equipment, as should you. And paid antivirus, they should have changed the password on their broadband router from the default and know how to do that, and do it, check it regularly. So there's some things most of our clients, to be honest, will have us work in a domain, and then we do annual training. So as a guide, my annual training this year, the actual training, which was bespoke to us, cost about 300 quid, I think, maybe 400. But because I pay for everybody's time to come, because it is compulsory, cost me £2,000, and it overran by 15 minutes, which cost me an extra 300. So those are the types of expenses we're talking about when you're dealing with a bigger team, right? If you're expecting people to turn up and do compulsory training, you have to pay them to do it. Otherwise, why would they? We have training more often, we have lunch and learns all the time, but they're optional. And people don't have to come, and they're not billable, right? People can come, but they can't charge for it. So it's like, if you must come, it is paid for. If you want to come, that's great, but we're not paying you. If I do team meetings where I really want people to come, then I'll be like, please come, I will pay you. So it's about being fair to people, really. I mean, would you want to sit through an hour and 15 minutes of cyber training? No, God, I didn't. I'd rather stick pins in my eyes. But we have to make sure that we are current on the latest law, because GDPR is now called something else because it's not Europe anymore. It's got a new name. We need to make sure when we're talking to clients we're using the right terminology, because most of us still say GDPR when we don't really mean GDPR, even though our hearts are in the right place because we're doing the right stuff. Keeping up to speed on all of that stuff is really important. AML as well. A couple of my team are AML registered, as am I. And I will pay for their training every year and the time it takes for them to do it, because I am responsible for it. Whereas other things that are less regulatory, not so much. Right, so we've really got to the end of time now. I hope you found that helpful. If you have more questions that I haven't answered, or you didn't want to put them in the chat, feel free to message me. You've got my LinkedIn on the doodah there. But hopefully that was helpful. Do connect. I'm always happy to have a chat to people who are thinking about growing a team. It's a challenge. Really fun, but it's useful to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, and there are a few of us doing it now. I can send you a link to a couple of good Facebook pages as well that's designed for agency owners that have these kind of conversations. So really hope that was helpful. Thank you ever so much. I'm going to end the doodah now, which sounds very technically.